Hello, and welcome to Shrink, the podcast for the mind. I'm Philippe, and I talk to the people who want to have a better understanding of their issues with weight and body image. Hello, Dawn.
Hi, how are you? Nice to see you today.
Nice to see you too. So you're Dawn Lerman, and you're in New York.
Yes, I am.
I'm in London. And you're the author of My Fat Dad.
Yes.
And it's been a while since I wanted the two of us to have a chat about your story, what you've been through, your book, which is amazing. I mean, I've ordered it, but I didn't start reading it yet, but I'm for sure going to read it. So would you like to tell us more about yourself and how you got to write that book?
Yeah, sure. So I wrote this book, My Fat Dad, Memoir of Food, Love, and Family with Recipes. Mm-hmm. And it's a memoir about growing up with the 450-pound Don Draper. He was a big ad man. And every week he was either on a new diet or he was writing a new ad campaign. And whatever he was doing, the whole family had to be a part of. And it was very chaotic and it was very chaotic and very kind of creative. But my grandmother, who I used to spend all my time with when I was younger. So before I moved to New York, I live in New York and I've lived here since I was 9. I lived in Chicago, and every weekend my grandmother would pick me up and she would make me food and we'd cook, and she'd teach me, how to cook, and we'd spend the day grocery shopping, and she'd introduce me to the baker and the butcher, and it was a whole ritual. Then we'd come back and we'd lay out the ingredients and decide what we were making. And she really emphasized that food is love. But not only did she tell me, I felt it. I felt it when I walked in to her house, and the smell of the chicken soup and the dill and the baked cookies. And it made me feel really special. And then when I moved to New York, she's like, I won't be able to do this for you anymore, but you could do this for yourself. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to send you.
How old were you then? Sorry to interrupt you.
I was only 9.
9. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So she would send me a recipe card and a $20 bill every week. And she'd be
really?
She'd be like, if I'm making chicken soup, you could cook chicken soup.
That's
and then you could just call me, as we go along, and we could be doing this together. That way we'll stay connected, and I'll know you're nourishing yourself, and you're learning. And that way you won't have the problems that your dad did. And this is not my...
what do you mean by that? By you won't have the problems that your dad had. What did she mean by that? Because you would know how to cook and...
Well, this is not her son. This is her son-in-law. So my dad was addicted to dieting and processed food, and he thought every food was a miracle food, but it was not real food. It wasn't like a banana or an apple. It was something that had a marketing program, a bar. You eat this bar and it'll make you skinny. And of course he'd eat 100 of the bars and not realize, but he's like, it's going to make me skinny. He was really addicted to the promise, the dream, something marketed to him. And my grandmother's like, no, first of all, it has no fiber, no, it's just junk, and junk kind of stays in your body. And if you want to be healthy, you have to really kind of appreciate the food you're eating, So she'd be like, if, we're going to go to the butcher and we're going to get the chicken, and everything is prepared with love. And we'd put out all our ingredients, and, a chicken soup would have just some vegetables, some water, and some chicken. Yeah. And she'd be like, if you need to smell it, and if your food does not have a flavor, and this is something that I'm also a nutritionist that stayed with me. People are like, oh, how come you don't crave sweets? I'm like, I actually do crave sweets, the things that I bake myself, but I don't crave things that come from a package that have no smell.
No, I get that. You're so right. Yeah. Right. And how about your mother then? Was she cooking or?
No, my mother was kind of rebellious against her mother, everything kind of skips a generation. Yeah. So, my mom was the opposite. She kind of thought her mother, my grandmother, who we nicknamed Beauty, was wasting her time. All she would do is she'd go to the market and she'd cook and she'd make these beautiful meals for her family. And, my mom was, a product of like the 60s and the 70s. And, she was following Gloria Steinem, and she wanted like more. She wanted to travel the world. Like my grandmother.
Of course, I get that. Of course, yeah.
So she just, she didn't want to cook. She wanted to travel the world and, meet lots of people. So she had a totally different reality. So she did not cook at all.
So who was cooking, in fact? You were sometimes?
I was the only one cooking. So once I moved, when I stayed at my grandmother's in Chicago, she would cook for me and then give me like, leftovers for for the rest of the week. But when I moved, I was the only one that was, around to cook for myself.
It's from the age of 9, you mean? You were
exactly.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's very young to start cooking for yourself. And do you feel like your father was watching you, or your mother was watching you when you were cooking, or like envying you, or?
Oh no! They weren't home at all. They like my mom was, out taking acting classes and trying to be an actress, and my dad, I don't know if you saw Mad Men. He was he was like Don Draper. He was out, every night, all night, partying and living the life. So, and I had a little sister, so I was the only one to kind of take care of her. My grandmother would say, "You do for her April what I did for you."
And so it's like your grandmother saved you somehow.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's what I say. Sorry? I say my grandmother saved my life one recipe at a time.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she
did.
And do you still enjoy cooking now?
Yes, I do. Not as much after the pandemic, but yes, I do. I love like baking things. I'm more, my thing is like, I really like baking things, like things that people think can't be healthy. But they are. Like last night, I make my kids like blondies that are just made out of like almond butter and protein powder and eggs and a little bit of vanilla. So it's like, it's a meal, even though it looks like a cookie, it's actually like a meal because it's full of good protein. And
did you feel sorry for your dad when you were seeing that, he was somehow not taking good care of himself, and it can be dangerous to be that overweight? Did you feel sorry for him, or were you scared for him?
Yeah, as I said, like whatever diet he was on, I was on. Like he would like kind of like demand it. I mean, when I was with him, like I would do other things when I wasn't with him, but like if he was on the Israeli army diet or if he was on the grapefruit diet, everyone had to do what he did. He would like throw everything else out of the house, and all my things I kind of had to like kind of hide. Like I'd have to have my own like, like little like section because he would like eat it all.
So was it imposed by him, the fact that you all had to eat the same stuff as he was eating, or going on the same diet?
We were never really in the house together. So like if he was eating something and he was around, like he was a big presence. Everybody had to do, he called himself Fat Albert, and we walked in the room, he'd be like, hey, Fat Albert is here. And like he was like a presence, and we just had to kind of do what he wanted. And the only way I was able to bond with him was either like helping him with his ad campaigns or helping with whatever diet. So if he was on Atkins, I would like cook him, I'd make him like diet cheesecake and steak and bacon, but I would still be cooking for myself the way my grandmother taught me. So.
And so you were worried for him?
Oh, of course. I mean, also, not only was I worried for him, and as a kid, it was kind of like, he couldn't fit on a bus, he'd have to get 2 seats on an airplane. He was huge.
Yeah. And I mean, it's amazing that you didn't get into any kind of issue with your own diets, that you didn't get into.
No, I was always like, as my grandmother said, I really kind of just really followed what she said.
Yeah, so that's why, as you said, that's why she somehow saved your life. And did you gather that although he had some kind of, I mean, I don't know if it's the right word in English, like a jolly personality, or he was that there was something. Sorry.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
He was like jolly. Do you say that in English? I think you say that, like,
jolly. He was very jolly. Oh yeah.
But then there was, but deeper inside him, there must have been, some kind of wounds or stuff that were making him eat that much, I guess.
Yes, I mean, he was like abused as a child. I mean, he didn't really talk very much. I only found this out much later in life, but he was not really close to us. I mean, like we would go out and maybe we'd go to the grocery store together, or maybe we cooked together, but he wasn't very personal. You know, it wasn't like he really
couldn't get intimate, couldn't get to be too
no,
intimate.
he didn't really ask too much about me. I didn't ask too much about him. And if he did, he would change the subject. So it was kind of always very superficial.
And did he drink also, or not really?
No, he wasn't really a drinker, but he definitely went out at night and lived, he had 3 martini lunch and, lived that decadent, like hedonistic madman life, like there's no shortage of like craziness of things that like happened in our house. And I'll show you some pictures, even though he was heavy, he was extremely, well, here's like a picture when he went to the fat farm. So he looked like this. He was 50. And then he went down to 175 in 6 months.
Wow. Like dieting in an extreme way somehow.
Oh, always. But you can see here, he was a very like kind of charming and fun.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. You must miss him so much.
Yeah. So his like weight never really, maybe it bothered him internally, but not in his personality or the way he lived. He was always like out and about, and he would wear tight leather pants even though he was 450 and like crazy blazers. He loved like clothes and fashion and like
I wish I would have met him, and he seems like he wasn't like an amazing
he was definitely and he also wrote like all the famous slogans like Coke is it, all the American ones.
Really?
Coke is
okay,
it.
All right.
Lego my ego, fly the friendly skies of United. Once you pop, you can't stop. I mean, he was like a legend.
Very creative, yeah.
Very creative.
Do you feel like there is a confusion between food and love, or loving food and what are your feelings about that?
To me, they're the same in a way. Like when somebody prepares something for you, that's a form of love because they're taking the time. They're trying to know what you like. They're, like I try and do something to someone's best, to their like, desires, for each person, you cook something a little bit different. And someone taking the time to do that for you. And that's like when my grandmother, when I used to walk into her house when I was little, my first memory is being like 3 years old. And her real name was Bessie, and she'd stand there on her stairs when my grandfather would pick me up, and she'd be like, my little beauty, my little beauty. So I thought that was her name. I thought her name was Beauty. I'd run up the stairs. As soon as I went in, she'd be like, I made you chicken soup. I made you cocoa. I made you cookies. I made you a fruit salad. So that was like how she showed love. So that's like how I've also learned to show love.
But then, let's say when you had enough, when you were eating, then you had enough. It's like you had enough of her love somehow. Was it confusing sometimes?
I don't think there was ever enough of her love because
but if you had enough of her food, let's say, I know that sometimes when food is love, it can create this thing where we feel guilty when we want to stop eating, but somehow we feel like we're going to hurt the person who's been putting so much effort into preparing that food, and it's like we're saying somehow I've had enough of your love. Have you ever had
No, I mean, my other grandmother, I had another grandmother, her name was Bubby Mary, and that was my father's mother, and she would make big, like heavy portions of food. And she'd make you eat until you threw up. And that was different because I only saw her like once a year. And so she was like shoving all that love into like once, into like 2 hours of seeing her. But my grandmother, I mean, we talked, we cooked, we shopped, she gave me baths, she washed my hair, she braided my hair, she was
not the only way for her to express her love for you.
No, she was my person. But I mean, her thing was definitely food because that's what she, learned, and that's what she kind of passed on to me.
And now, do you have kids now? I think.
I have I have big kids. I have an 18-year-old daughter and a 22-year-old son.
Okay, so what's your relationship? Do you also show your love to them by cooking for them, or
I cook, we talk about food, we go out to eat, we shop for food. I mean, there's many different components. I'm a very involved mom, but yeah, it's important to me, and especially when they were little, even more so than now, is always packing nice lunches with little notes and having nice food when in the winter when they came home, so it felt like warm and cozy.
It's funny because when I hear you saying that, I always considered that food was not love. You can cook for someone with love, and you can cook for people that you love because you want to please them. But somehow, sometimes for some people, it's very confusing when they think that food is love. It's like it's difficult to know when to stop, in fact, and because it's like if you don't have more food. I mean, I'm making it more, kind of making it more simple. I explain it in a simple way, but it's like you don't want any more love, and and some people, it's very confusing for some people, in fact.
I think that's a little bit different. So like it's like if I was an artist and I made my daughter a painting, that would be my expression of love, right? That would be my art form. So with my grandmother, that was her art form. With me, that's my art form. When I go to people's houses and I stay at their house and I cook or I bake, that's me saying, in a form of love instead of just going to the store and just buying whatever's fast.
No, I get that. It's the way you do it because you share what you're doing and you do it together and you talk about it. So it's not just feeding someone. Yeah.
Exactly. But like other people, like my son's girlfriend is making him a sweater, so that's showing her love in a different way. So I guess it's the feeling of like the homemade and the special, and everyone has different ways. But as I was saying, my father's mother, she didn't communicate at all, and I'm not sure exactly what went on in that household, but so she would make food and she'd sit and she'd just keep shoving it in their mouths, and if they didn't eat it, she'd make them feel guilty. So that's a different kind of like disordered eating. But when you're cooking something with love and you're cooking together and you're sharing a meal,
that's a different story then.
That's a different story.
Yeah. And you feel like it's a very Jewish thing to share the joys of I'm Jewish as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
And you think it's a very Jewish thing to share the love of food, the love of cooking and stuff like that? Or is it changing, in fact? Or was it like that before? It's kind of changing?
I think it's changing. I think maybe it's starting to shift back, but I think it's definitely changing. Like, my mother's generation was all about rebelling against that. Like, we don't want to eat these like traditional foods. We want TV dinners and we don't want to spend time. And why do we want to grocery shop and cook? We want other things, my mother was a big follower of like, Erica John and, reading The Fear of Flying and The Sexual Revolution. So like that was anything that had to do with home would be not love to her. That would be imprisonment. You know what I mean? But I feel like now people are getting back to that. And I think people really started enjoying cooking more during like COVID as well. Like I think people kind of saw like it's just nice to like you don't have to be running around so much, just like staying home and cooking with your family.
No, I agree.
Together.
Yeah, but the thing is that many people did put on some weight during COVID as well, because there was some anxiety, there was some boredom, and somehow food was a way for them to manage their emotions.
Well, also, I mean, here in New York, there was nothing else to do. Like we were stuck inside, like you couldn't go outside. There was like nothing else to do. But again, it's like, and during COVID, that actually was a kind of eye-opening for me in a certain way, because I live in New York City, so I could always, if I want chicken, go to the store. If I want organic carrots, go to the store. Whatever I need, I could kind of just go to the store and buy it. But during COVID, it was kind of like you get what you get, like you get one roll of toilet paper and you take a piece, you couldn't, if I wanted to make chicken soup, there might not be chicken. So I might have to get something that I don't normally get, or maybe there was only pasta. So you kind of had to learn to do the best of it and then kind of really be grateful for all the like variety we normally have. Kind of be creative.
Yeah. And do you feel like you'd like to write another book, or are you writing another book, or?
Well, right now I'm trying to turn my book, My Fat Dad, into a TV series.
Really?
Yeah, and it's kind of chronicling my life growing up with this 450-pound man and how my grandmother's weekly recipe card saved my life. But it's really kind of like a coming of age story in New York City in the 70s. And it really looks at relationships between food and love and culture, and how with all these absent parents, I was able to connect to people of the city through food. Like at 11 years old, I worked at like an Indian restaurant, learning how to like make spices. And it was a different time, people were open and people would take you in. I worked in the health food store, like cutting up carrots for juice and, so how my love of food really connected me to people and gave me a purpose.
So it would be great if it was made into a.
It would be, yeah.
Who would you think? Who would you like to see as the actor doing the role of your father?
I haven't really thought about like a young John Belushi, but my
that would be nice. That would be nice. Well, sometimes when I was reading some reviews of your book, and I mean the reviews are really good, and made me think of myself because I was really overweight for many years when I was when my kids were young, and I've tried a few diets as well, and I was always wondering, how it did affect them, because they would see me overeating and loving food. I mean, I wasn't overeating because I was loving food. I was overeating for different reasons, emotional reasons mainly. And it made me wonder how, what the impact it has on them, seeing me overweight and what they worried. And it's something I never really addressed with them. And I'd like to do that, to know what kind of impact it had on them. And because it's like you're watching someone who's hurting themselves.
Yeah.
When you're overeating that way, you're taking risk with your health. You're hurting yourself, and it's not a nice something you want to see in someone that you love.
That is definitely true. I mean, like with my dad, it was extreme, so we knew it. Like, he made it a joke. He'd be like, "We're going out to dinner," and he'd be like, we're gonna have to wait. I'm gonna be so hungry. He'd order a pizza, and then we'd be like, "Oh, we want a piece," and he'd shove the whole thing in his mouth, and we'd be like, "Hey," and then he'd make a joke. So we knew there was it was not quite right, stuffing emotions.
You couldn't speak about it. You couldn't speak about it with him because he would make a joke about it.
He would make a joke. I would kind of speak, but he would not engage. He wouldn't go there. I don't think he was actually capable at that time with me.
So, I mean, I'm really looking forward to reading your book. I will let you know what I thought of it, and I think it's a great book for me.
Sorry.
And no, it's okay. You've got a cold or?
No. I just had something stuck in my throat. I'm good.
Maybe it's the emotion because we're talking about all that.
Exactly.
And well, thank you for chatting with you. Is there anything else you wanted to add? I mean, I will of course mention your book when I will post it on my podcast.
And then I also have a column in the I haven't written anything for over a year because once my dad, I had a series in the New York Times and the Wow blog also called Fat Dad, but you can look at some of the old articles.
Oh, okay, I will do that. So maybe you will send me the link for that, and I can put it as well in the description of this episode. Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to say or?
No, and I do private counseling. I work with people all over the world via Zoom.
Okay, as a nutritionist,
yeah, I do nutritional counseling. I do individuals. I do families. I also specialize in kids with ADHD and learning disorders. How food is a disruptor, and by changing certain things, you could get off medications, or it also helps. With medications, if you need to be on medication, it really even helps to make it more powerful. I work with, families on setting up meal plans. I work with individuals. I work with people with diabetes. So I do the gamut. I've been doing this since I'm 9 years old. So that's definitely kind of like my passion. It's kind of like,
it's so interesting. It's not only in the Jewish families, but the transgenerational, that's a difficult word for me, the transgenerational aspect of things, and we're talking here about food and our eating habits and how it we try, it goes from one generation to the other, and what we how we can change some things when we think they can be toxic or dangerous, and it's very, very interesting. Thank you very, very much for.
Thank you so much. This is delightful. I love your accent.
Well, I'm trying. You know what? I've tried to hide it for a long time, but I don't even try anymore because I sound ridiculous when I try to sound English. It's even worse. So no, thank you. Anyway, thank you for the compliment.
Thank you so much. This was so enjoyable.
Yes, for me too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.